when I'm not low-key dropping hints and reminders to everybody in the weeks preceding my birthday, and then acting surprised and humbled when I get a present. I like to answer questions that I get on YouTube, so let's get to it. STP, They Don't Get Enough Love. Favorite Stone Temple Pilots album and song. Man, I love Stone Temple Pilots, and obviously my favorite album is Shangri-La-Dee-Da, and my favorite song is Sour Girl. Just playing, that's not true. Favorite album is 100% Core, and I think my favorite song is actually Trippin' on a Hole in a Paper Heart. Awesome, huge Stone Temple Pilot fan. I'm definitely going to try to convince somebody to start doing some STP covers soon here, so stay tuned for that. On a tangent to the album discussion, do you think the algorithms, for example Spotify Discover Weekly, to find new songs are improving people's taste of music? You know, that's a good question, and I'm not really sure if people's taste in music can be improved, but I think it's actually a very useful algorithm, however these things work. Again, I don't use Spotify, I use Apple Music, but it's probably the same kind of premise, and I've personally found a lot of good music through the suggested listening stuff, and also I found a lot of awful music too. So it's not perfect, but I think anything that just exposes artists that otherwise you never really get any shine from is only a good thing, and kind of just increases everyone's musical vocabulary. So I am all for the Pandora, Spotify, Apple Music, anything that can kind of bring new different types of music to the forefront that isn't just like the mass marketed like nonsense. I'm 100% all for. So a little something different for Salty Blues this week. We're gonna do a Salty Blues public service announcement and just kind of talk about in general how you can deal with salt and what that does to the earth. So we're gonna start with this quote right here. F you with your shiz. So that was posted on a video called How to Find Out What Key You're In. Apparently he took issue with my free internet YouTube guitar lesson that was trying to help him find out how to find the key of a song. So I said, instead of being salty back to him, I opened my heart and I said, haha, I guess you didn't find out what key you were in. To which he replied, man, I find it hard to change the chord from one to another. We've all been there, man. Just stick with it. Thanks, man, you're awesome. Sorry for before. No worries, dude, it's frustrating. And when you're at that stage, just keep a good attitude and you'll be rocking it in no time. So this is something that actually happens a lot on the channel, and I kind of wanted to bring it up because I think it's just a great example about the actual saltiness of the blues player. I mean, the blues player in general it's usually not a bad guy or girl, and that kind of goes to, that's kind of true with like a lot of trolls out there. What you have to do is you just have to take the salt, see it for what it is, a reflection of maybe they're having a bad day, maybe their confidence is low, and you just take a little chisel and you just chip away at those layers of salt. Maybe run a little water over it, give it a nice bath, and eventually you're left with this pure, good-hearted blues player. And that pureness is inside every blues player. And just to a greater extent, to a greater lesson, I think that's the best way to kind of deal with salt all over the world. Just treat it with nothing but love and respect, and it's going to be hard for them to kind of keep that barrier of salt shown to the world forever and ever. Now again, I'm not against fighting salt with salt some of the time, but I try to keep it at least to like a 5-to-1 love to salt ratio. So I implore you all out there, whenever you see the salt coming at you aggressively, just treat it with love, and you might be surprised at the results that you get. I love listening to albums cover to cover. I've been getting into a habit recently where I'm actively trying to discover new music by picking some artists where I feel I need to hear them, and then just listening to all their albums in chronological order. I finished Red Hot Chili Peppers last week and I love their stuff. I also just finished with Muse's latest album just this morning, and I didn't expect to enjoy them as much as I do. Is this something that you also have done before? If not, it's something I highly recommend because it broadens your musical knowledge and it's a lot of fun to do. So I actually did this exact same thing when I discovered my favorite band of all time, which I usually have in the one spot. Sometimes I put them second. Radiohead. I remember I used to vacation to Florida when I was in college, and for the longest time, I kept hearing that Radiohead was awesome. They kept winning like best band in the world like year after year. This is kind of around like Hail to the Thief era. And I listened to a few songs, never really got into them, never really understood. But for whatever reason, one fateful trip to Florida, I was like, this is going to be when I actually try to figure out what is going on with Radiohead. And I remember I started with the Bends. I skipped Pablo Honey, which a lot of people kind of do. But yeah, started with the Bends. And I went home, I listened to it on my Sony Walkman CD player, and it was awesome. It was like fantastic. For whatever reason, it took listening to an album in its entirety for me to like truly understand. And I think that's kind of the way a lot of people are with Radiohead. For me, this was anything before I turned like 2021, wherever I was in my musicianship at the time, which was still pretty early on, I just was not ready for Radiohead yet at that time. And I just had a feeling that maybe it was time for me to get into Radiohead, and I just did it hook, line, and sinker. I had Benz the first day, I went back to Best Buy that very same day, got OK Computer, came home, got Kid A the next day, Amnesiac the next day, then Hail to the Thief, and I've been a huge fan ever since. So I think especially if you're maybe trying to get into a band, or you just kind of heard some good things about a band who maybe somehow has escaped your radar to this point, this guy's right on. Maybe just start listening to the back catalog one album at a time instead of just kind of cherry picking the hits, because that gives you just kind of like a fuller idea of like the scope and kind of like how a band has evolved over time. Because if you just kind of listen to maybe just what the most popular songs are from an artist, so many times you're getting really not their best work up front, because as we all kind of know, like the music machine just kind of will pick something and run with it, and that is definitely not likely a representation of that artist's best work. So I think you're definitely onto something, and really, yeah, just start checking out catalogs, listen to albums cover to cover. I think that's a great way to start for any band, especially established bands like the Chili Peppers, like Muse, like Radiohead, stuff like that. And really just try to enjoy it. Thoughts on Guild guitars. I actually have first-hand experience with Guild. The greatest guitar I have ever heard was one that I actually owned. It was a Guild CV1. It was one of the ones, I think it was right before Fender bought them. Fantastic guitar. I got it at a local guitar shop here, and I loved that guitar. It was gorgeous. It just sounded so good, but it was an absolute beast to play. The action, I could never get right. I took it to several people. There was no way, for whatever reason, again, I'm not a luthier by any stretch of the imagination, and nobody could get it to play great without being buzzy, or to have it sound great without the action being just like really like insane on your hands. And I loved that guitar. It sounded so good. But I remember I was in like a session where I really had to get this kind of intricate part down that had like a lot of bar chords and stuff, and I was just grinding it, and it was killing my hands trying to get that guitar to sound as good as I could for like, you know, like a 2-hour session, which is definitely something that is kind of unacceptable. Like it sounded so good. I can't even explain how awesome that Guild CV1 sounded, but how it was so hard to play and I could never get it set up right. So that day, actually, I brought it in to the guitar shop I got it at, and I was like, listen, I love this guitar. It's fantastic. Again, it was American made. I think I got it kind of cheap because there was like a blemish on like the coating, like the gloss coating, which nobody could even like see. But I returned it to Justin. That's when my man Justin, who's been on the channel a lot of times, was working at the guitar shop. And I was like, I just got to take this back because I can't do it anymore. I needed to get something that day. I was all ready to get like one of the Seagulls. And he's like, listen, I know you're not a Taylor guy, but please try this Taylor GA3 out. And I took his advice, and this has since become like my absolute favorite guitar because it sounds great. Doesn't sound as good as that Guild CV1 does, but it plays amazingly and has never really let me down. So I've played a lot of the Guild stuff to kind of mixed results. I kind of think their QC is dynamic. It's all over the board. I've played some amazing Guilds. I've played some Guilds that were like, why is this like $1,000 guitar? I know they definitely have their fanboys and fangirls because there's a lot of brand loyalty there, but the brand is kind of in flux generally all the time. So definitely if you have an opportunity to play a Guild, I recommend giving it a shot because some of them are just amazing guitars. But in my experience, some of them are also just really hard to play, or there's just like mysterious things wrong with them. So if anybody has a similar experience with the Guild stuff, please let us know in the comments, and maybe kind of help the community out who might be looking into going that direction. Not a music question, but who you got for McGregor versus Mayweather? So I lived in Vegas for a couple years. I think it's no surprise that obviously Mayweather is going to destroy McGregor, and it's going to be one of the most unwatchable fights you'll ever see, just like pretty much any Mayweather fight, where he's just not going to get tagged, he's going to dance around, and eventually win by unanimous decision. They're both going to make tens of millions of dollars, and everyone's going to be wildly unsatisfied with the fight. Hey Sean, when you learn a new song, do you just use your ear to figure it out, go straight to YouTube, like I found myself doing a lot lately, or something else entirely? So basically, when I learn new songs now, it's pretty much almost always by ear. Now, sometimes I'll use the Ultimate Guitar app to kind of get me started in the right direction, but generally, I've gotten pretty good at just figuring stuff out by ear, and I really have Ian to thank for this because of his insane cheapness. We have the studio, which is downtown, as part of this theater where we both teach guitar out of, and there's no Wi-Fi in this guitar studio, and there's no Wi-Fi in the studio because Ian is so cheap, he won't get it. And it's like when you're in this place, it's like a fortress of bricks, and there's no internet service at all. So I've been forced to improve my ears by, like, a student wants to learn something and they'll play it on their phone because they have it loaded up, and I can't even look up the tab. So I've been forced to actually just hear it and play it, which I'm not giving Ian any credit for this, but has been an incredible boon to my musicianship, and now I feel like it's like a real strength of mine, which is something I never really trained myself to do, but it's something that now I recommend everybody train themselves to do and try to figure the song out, even if it's just for a couple minutes before going to a tab or going to a chord chart, because again, you'll find that pretty quickly you make that connection between your ears and your brains and your fingers, and more often than not, you'll start going to the right place without even really having to think about it. So definitely, I'm a huge proponent of just trying to figure songs out by yourself first, and then maybe checking it with the tab record and seeing how far off you are. In my humble opinion, albums will only be around when an artist gives you a reason to pick up a whole album. Modern pop has virtually no relationship from song to song. Will there ever be another The Wall? Doubtful, which is a real shame. Maybe if we can get some rock alternative genres up on the charts, we'll see a resurgence of that. Is anyone aware of a modern pop band singer that builds stories through multiple songs? Yeah, so the last couple weeks we've been talking a little bit about just the concept of an album where the songs tie in and kind of create like a storytelling atmosphere, which is something that is pretty absent in recent pop music. But I will say, I don't know if this counts, but my girl Janelle Monae, who I think is fantastic. Right now she's got basically 2 albums out, starting with the Arcandroid, and it's kind of like this 4-part opus. I mean, there was the EP that started out the whole thing anyways, but it's kind of like this 4-album, I think is like a masterpiece that kind of tells the story of this like funky, futuristic, post-apocalyptic tale. I'm a giant Janelle Monae fan, which I'm actually going to make the listening homework for this week, because I think that she's, I don't know if she's technically like pop, but she is a very popular artist that does get a lot of shine, and she has endorsements and kind of like the whole deal. So again, huge Janelle Monae fan. Definitely check out her stuff because I think it's so cool, and I have just like a lot of respect for her as an artist, which is why I was so heartbroken when the yoga music video came out, because I thought she was just such an incredible female role model, where I don't think there are really a lot of them, just for kind of like younger girls to look up to in the music industry. And I thought she was totally that. And then the yoga thing kind of sexualized herself in a way that I thought she was totally against. Anyways, that's besides the point. Have a lot of respect for Janelle Monae. I think you should check her out by clicking that link below. And as always, if you have any other questions, comments, or concerns, hit me up in the comment section, the Instagram, Twitter, or the website, and I will talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot.